This is the Google Pixel 10 Pro XL, and while it looks almost identical to the version before it, there's a lot more to unpack here than you might think. For the past week, I've been testing out everything that I can on it, and there are definitely some worthwhile upgrades to the Pixel 10 series that do elevate it over last year's model. And it still is one of the best options out there when it comes to smartphones, but there are also some areas where it falls short compared to the competition, and a few things that, in my opinion, could be improved. Today, I'm going over what those things are, both good and bad, and diving into what my personal experience has been like using the Pixel 10 Pro XL as my main device. So with that said, let's get into it. This video is sponsored by Torras. Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. If you're buying a Pixel phone these days, there's a good chance that you're not going to get too caught up in specs, and you're likely just looking for a phone with great build quality and a clean software experience that just works. Probably something that you can pick up and use for everyday things that takes great photos, or maybe even use AI to some extent without too many hiccups. And in large part, that's what the Pixel 10 series offers, with a few exceptions and things to look out for. For starters, when it comes to the design, like I said, it looks almost identical to the previous generation. It has the exact same dimensions, the same general style with a pill-shaped camera visor, but the visor is a bit bigger this year, and you do have a couple new color options in Jade and Moonstone. I chose to get Porcelain this year for a change, where last year I bought Obsidian. I do really like darker colors, but I just find that they get dirty way too easily, so I'm hoping the lighter color will be a bit better in that regard. Whichever color you choose, you'll get a matte glass back and a glossy front display that are still Gorilla Glass Victus 2, while the frame and the edges are polished aluminum that do give off a very premium feel with nice tactile clicky buttons. The aluminum in the Pixel 10 was apparently upgraded to spacecraft grade aluminum. I'm not exactly sure what the exact benefit with that is at this point, but I do know that last year I thought that I was going to live dangerously with the 9 XL and go caseless, which was a huge mistake. Within a week, I ended up dropping it, and I got a huge gouge mark from hitting the edge of my desk. I think the aluminum in that phone is pretty soft, so hopefully the 10 XL is a bit stronger in that sense, but there is no chance that I'm going without a case this time, which brings us to this week's sponsor, Torras. Torras sent me their O-Stand Q3 spin case after I picked up my Pixel 10 Pro XL. The design feels solid without adding too much bulk, the texture feels great in the hand, and it's built with drop protection up to 12 feet, so it can take a hit while keeping a fairly slim profile. The best feature though is the 360-degree rotatable kickstand on the back. It flips out smoothly and locks into whatever position you need, vertical for video calls, horizontal for watching content, and you can use it as a grip for holding your phone, which in my opinion is a lot more comfortable than resting it on your finger. On top of that, it is fully compatible with a new Pixel Snap feature on the Pixel 10, and the magnet is surprisingly strong. It attaches to chargers and accessories and stays secure, and altogether, the O-Stand Q3 Spin combines great functionality with a premium feel. And if you'd like to check it out, I will have a link in the description for it below. Now, regardless of which case you choose, you'll probably want to make sure it is fairly lightweight, because the Pixel 10 Pro XL is definitely on the heavier side. It weighs in at 232 grams, which is slightly bigger than most flagships at this size, so you can feel a bit of fatigue if you're resting it on your pinky versus using something like that ring grip or a pop socket, but all in all, overall build quality is outstanding. That continues over to the display where, again, it's pretty much the same as last year's model. It's the same 1344 by 2992 LTPO OLED panel, but it does go up to 2200 nits max brightness in HDR or 3300 nits peak brightness, which is about 300 more than last year, so easily viewable outdoors and daylight, but the difference between the 9 Pro isn't really perceivable. It's still great for general usage where everything feels very smooth and fluid with the 120Hz refresh rate. And because that LTPO display goes all the way down to 1 Hz, It will match frame rates in content that make the image a bit more pleasant, and it is also very color accurate as well if you're someone who's editing photos or doing any color critical work on here. You've also got an in-display ultrasonic fingerprint reader that some people say is faster or works better than last year. I haven't noticed much of a difference myself, but I mostly have been sticking to face unlock through the pinhole camera cutout. That's worked great so far. That camera, and the whole camera system for that matter, have the exact same specs as last year, where the front-facing camera is a 42 megapixel f2.2 lens, the rear main is 50 megapixels at f1.68, ultra-wide is 48 megapixels at f1.7, and the 5x telephoto is 48 megapixels at f2.8, but there are some improvements here. First off, that telephoto is supposed to have better optical image stabilization, so you're a lot more likely to capture sharper images and smooth video on that lens. I generally find the photos coming off of it to be quite nice, provided you're not too close up to your subject, but it's also helpful when using the new 100x ProRes zoom feature, which I'm honestly not a huge fan of. Essentially how that works is when you zoom in anywhere past 30x when taking a photo, the phone is going to use the AI ProRes Zoom cleanup, where it'll sharpen up any edges and remove a lot of the noise in the image. And granted, it does work a lot better than most other phones that do something similar, but it still looks like an AI image to me most of the time, unless the picture is very simple. You get a lot of soft edges, text can end up looking pretty weird, and I'm just not sure that I would ever use it much. The same could be said for the new camera coach feature that basically uses AI to guide you through how to take a picture, but I find sometimes it does have some weird suggestions, and on rare occasions it just doesn't work at all. If you just stay within the regular zoom ranges taking normal pictures though, you'll get excellent photos from every lens with nice natural colors that aren't oversaturated, good dynamic range, and portrait mode is a lot nicer this year as well, which wasn't as good on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. There's also an improved macro mode, which I've been quite happy with, and night photos are probably better than any other phone out there right now. The one thing that I will say is that when you're in the camera app switching between lenses, sometimes it seems like there's a lot of color shift happening between each lens. That does seem to get fixed up in post-processing after you take an image where they all match up quite well, but with video, it does seem to stick around depending on the scene, which is a bit disappointing. In fact, video in general I would say isn't the best on here. The picture is okay, and it is nice that Google actually puts a 4K 24 frames per second option in here, because a lot of manufacturers only have 30 and 60, which I find a bit annoying, but on top of these color issues, you can't shoot in 10-bit HDR in 4K 60, which other manufacturers have been doing for half a decade now. Part of me wonders if that might be a limitation of the Tensor chipset, as it's never really been the most powerful chip out there. The Tensor G5 in the Pixel 10 series does benchmark higher than the G4, but it's still way down the list as far as general performance goes. In Geekbench, you see about a 26% decrease in single-core performance, and about a 37% decrease in multi-core versus the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset that's in the S25 Ultra. So it's not the greatest in that sense, and with GPU performance, the G5 still doesn't have any hardware accelerated ray tracing, so the gap gets even bigger with over twice the performance on the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Translating that into real-world use though, you really don't notice that disparity at all with normal use, where everything feels super smooth and snappy on the Pixel 10 Pro. And I will say, the G5 generates a lot less heat than any previous Tensor chip that I've tried, so it seems like Google has finally figured that out. Now, if you move into more resource-heavy use cases like gaming, very demanding games do tend to struggle on here with lower frame rates, but lighter casual gaming is fine, and if you're buying a Pixel, it's probably not to play games on anyways, so I don't think that there's much to worry about for at least the next couple of years. That being said, I'm not so sure that this will end up lasting the full 7 years of software updates you get with this phone, at least not with it running smoothly. I guess that remains to be seen, but currently it runs Android 16 with a new Material 3 Expressive UI just fine, which I've been really enjoying so far. I just find everything feels a bit less enterprisey, if that makes sense. It's a bit more fun, the animations are nicer, where everything feels fluid, the haptics are fantastic, and you get some great new features, like customizable quick settings with resizable tiles, and a few more customization options for your lock screen. Also, in typical Google fashion, there were some new AI features added this year outside of the camera, which, side note, I see a lot of folks talk about benchmarks on these phones, but they rarely ever mention AI benchmarks, and the Tensor G5 blows the Snapdragon 8 Elite out of the water with 62% higher scores there. So it is pretty clear what direction Google is headed here. Anyway, the AI performance allows the Pixel 10 to run the newest Gemini Nano models locally that power things like camera processing, the ProRes zoom feature that we went over, and some other new stuff like voice translation and Magic Q. I really haven't had any reason to try out voice translation yet, and Magic Q hasn't really popped up at all for me, which is likely because I just got the device and I don't do a ton of scheduling or planning on here, but that essentially analyzes on-device data from different apps and gives you contextual suggestions for things like calendar appointments, photos to share in messages, and so on. But from what I've seen, both of those things seem like they might be a work in progress right now. I think the exciting part with that is there's no cloud processing needed for those features, and because it is all done on device, there's a lot less privacy risk, and you're able to use them offline, which is nice. Those features will work across the entire Pixel 10 lineup, and honestly, outside of the size, the Pixel 10 Pro and the 10 Pro XL share almost the exact same feature set, except when it comes to the battery life and charging. And this is another area where these phones are pretty average. The 10 Pro XL has a 5200 mAh battery, which is quite big and is the largest that Google puts in a Pixel. But unlike some of the other new flagships, it's not silicon carbon, and the battery life I would say is just okay. If you've been around on the channel before, you might remember at the start of the year I made an Android app to test out battery life for my OnePlus 13 review. The past few weeks I've spent some time updating that to try and make it feel like a better reflection of real-world screen on time. And when it starts, it programmatically sets the volume to 25% and the brightness to 50%, and then it cycles through simulated web browsing, video playback, and 3D scene rendering. With that running on the OnePlus 13, the Nothing Phone 3, and the Pixel 10 Pro XL, unsurprisingly the Phone 3 was the first to die at 6 hours and 17 minutes, the OnePlus 13 was the longest at 9 hours and 2 minutes, and the 10 XL lasted 6 hours and 40 minutes of continual use. So not the greatest by any means, but it'll still last a full day of use and is totally acceptable. When it comes time to charge, the Pixel 10 Pro XL has the highest wattage available out of any phones in the 10 series, with 45 watts wired charging and up to 25 watts wireless via Pixel Snap Qi 2. And this is what really pushed me over the edge this year to buy the XL versus the regular 10 Pro. Outside of the bigger screen and battery, this is one of the few advantages you get in the XL, and Google says that you can charge this from 0 to 70% in 30 minutes, where I haven't found it to be quite that fast. When measuring this myself, I found it to charge at about 40 watts max wired, and that 0 to 70 would take me about 40 minutes or so, which is still pretty quick. But the thing that I love on here is that they finally put magnetic charging on the device itself, and it works with MagSafe. So I can use all my MagSafe accessories that I've got around here. I'm just using a standard 15 watt MagSafe charger, and that'll take a few hours to fully charge, and as far as how powerful the magnets are, I can't really say for sure that they're stronger or weaker than my iPhone. To me, the important thing is that they're strong enough that whatever I clip on here is secure, and it doesn't move around at all, and that's all I care about personally. My only real minor concern with the battery is Google is introducing forced battery health at 200 cycles, where they plan to start lowering your voltage and max capacity, and 200 cycles for most people is less than a year's worth of usage. And there is no way to disable it, at least right now, which I think is kind of unfortunate, but We'll see how much that actually makes a difference long term. Outside that, in terms of connectivity, you've got Wi-Fi 7 that has been fantastic for me so far, and they've upgraded Bluetooth to version 6. That's worked well with anything that I've paired up to this phone, and Bluetooth 6 will get better latency with other Bluetooth 6 devices, with some updates to tracking and location services, and increased security and energy efficiency. So definitely nice to have. I think looking at this phone in its entirety, it's a really well built, solid phone, but I just wonder if it's worth the cost. This particular version that I have cost me 1,629 Canadian dollars or 1,200 USD. And you can get phones that offer equal or better performance for a lot less than this, but I guess it all depends on what you want out of your phone and what you care about. With that said, I would love to know where you guys stand on this. Do you think that this year's Pixel is worth it, or is the S25 Ultra or the OnePlus 13 still a better option? Let me know in the comments down below, along with anything that you like or dislike about the Pixel 10 series. That's all I got for you today. I hope you found this video useful or enjoyable. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more tech-related content, or help me create a Pixel Snap coaster that wirelessly chills your drinks, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.